some that I created outside of UT that I brought in, others that we're creating inside of UT. And we're going to be carrying that conversation onward, where we say, guess what? It's good to make a lot of money, but not at the sacrifice of the people that live around you. How do we do this together? How do we become more integrated? And so in this conversation, if some of the stuff I say makes you feel comfortable, feel free to go ahead and tell me about it. But it's hopefully a conversation we can have that's a lot more sober and frank and vulnerable, so that we can all learn from each other. I do not have all the answers. I'm going to give you my bias and my experience and my journey of how I see things and how we can become more inclusive and innovative. So Bob Metcalf is a professor at UT. He's also known as the inventor of the Ethernet, and that's his claim to fame. He teaches at the Cockrell School of Engineering, and he sat down and taught me this model for innovation. There's other models to innovation, but I'm explaining this one as a base ground level so that we may understand how this conversation is going to take hold. And so across the way, on the top, you'll have knowledge. And so knowledge is continually growing, right? From old to new, to new, to new, to new, to new, to, right? So it just continues to iterate as it moves forward. We'll do the same thing on the y-axis going down. So knowledge continues to grow. Application of that knowledge continues to grow. So let me give you an example. So there was a time where we had a horse and buggy. Actually, prior to that, there was a time where we had chariots, right? And chariots were for fighting wars and sending messengers off back and forth. From there, when the peace and tranquility came, we developed this thing called the horse and buggy. We still use horses, but now it was for common use. It was for daily use and to make life more stable. So we understood how the wheels work and be able to create basically a cart, and we started applying it in new ways. And so we moved into rank number 2. But then we're like, crap, when we create these horse and buggies, these horses take a lot of maintenance, and guess what? They shit a lot, right? So what do we do about that? Well, the phrase, they said they debunked this phrase that Henry Ford never said this, but they say that Henry Ford said that if he would have asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Whether it's true or not, my point is, the next iteration of something is not quite as evident, but we have to understand how things are being used today to figure out how they may be used tomorrow. And so we want to start looking for the trend lines and understanding how applications are being used today and how may they be repurposed for tomorrow. So we went for the horse and buggy, and then we realized, oh, you know what? We can have a combustion engine. Like, we had a first diesel engine. It was actually running on peanut oil. And like, okay, great. This revolutionized the whole conversation, because prior to that, we also had a competing product, which was the rail. And we actually had trolleys in certain cities that are all around. We actually used to have trolleys here up and down Austin, but the combustion engine and the automobile industry took off, and they displaced a lot of the rail industry, and then the automobile became common in modern America and became our center for economy of how things move around, and not only how we make a life, but how we just survive. Today, we are now moving into the autonomous generation. So we still have the same concept of transportation and how we use these wheels to get around, but now we have a new application for that, right? And now autonomous vehicles are the thing that is going to shape and almost displace again a whole sector of the population that drives for us goods and services, such as 18-wheel truck drivers, right? So as you can see, knowledge continues to increase, right? That's why we're able to get to autonomous vehicles, because we have computers that now basically run cars. And we figured out a new way to use that. So now we have 18-wheelers that are autonomous, that are coming into the market soon. And so that's how innovation really happens, or one of the ways. The other thing that I can add to this is the z-axis. And z-axis really is that time element that really helps kind of create snapshots, kind of like when time machine on your Mac, if you're a Mac user, like it's like snapshots in time that continue to iterate over and over again. So anyway, so consider as innovative? Let's just throw it out there. What do you guys think that is innovative today? What's something that's like, man, that stuff is really cool, and why is it cool? Yeah, Jess?
VR is pretty cool to me because it's one of the medias that you actually can imprint a memory. You can experience a physical memory from your experience with VR, which is like no other media we've ever had.
Because you can get lost in that world that you create, or that someone creates for you. Imagine the new applications that you could use with VR that are not commonly known today. Could we help address traumatic situations and issues that people have, or big stigmas or phobias that people have, maybe of heights, through VR, right? No one's commonly thinking about this. What kind of health issues could we help bring and address issues with VR? So really, the opportunity is right in front of us, and we're going to talk about how we actually get there. So here's the elements that actually are required for innovation. My biggest thing, as I said earlier, is this time aspect. Time allows us to start understanding where we are and where we've been and where we may be going. The second to that, in the process of the application, is what I would say, timing. And sometimes we've seen a lot of products and come out to the market and they fail. But then they come out again and they're a success. So does anyone remember the Newton? I mean, I'm dating myself here.
Yep.
But what was a Newton?
It was a handheld device that Scully put together at Apple.
What did it do?
Have no idea, never touched one.
Well, the Newton was basically one of the first iterations of a PDA.
Right.
It was able to actually detect your handwriting on its pad, right? You could actually write on it and it would translate it into regular text. But people are like, this is way too new for me. I don't know what to do with this technology. And the market, there's certain limitations that the market wasn't ready for. We didn't have those liquid crystal displays that we have today, or LED displays that we have today, that make things much more appealing. And when you combine those technologies and those technologies caught up, they merged them, and now you have touch, right? And now you have sensitivity to the pad. You can press harder, and it does certain things. That has all created more responsive devices, but the Newton was initially a trailblazer in that space where we came out too new. That was a lesson that Apple learned, that it was good to be innovative, but not too innovative. So they became, after that, a fast follower company. Actually, they went through a lot of unfocused years in the mid-90s, and then in 97, when Jobs came back, they became a real focused company. So they decided to roll out, and I'm being biased here because I used to work there. They rolled out basically one product, which was the iMac. Shut all the printer lines down, everything else that they did, right? We're gonna do one product. They had literally 2 or 3 weeks of payroll left. We're rolling out one product, we're selling it now. And there was a cute little TV called iMac, right? And then that's where the innovation started happening. Like, oh, this is really cool. So we basically now can have a portable desktop computer. That wasn't available before, right? You couldn't really, it was kind of bulky to carry on a desktop, but the technology had caught up where the components of the technology were easy enough to kind of fit in this TV-sized element. So timing is important. This is one I love. Raise your hand here if you're taking your strengths finder test, right? So my #1 strength finder is input. So some people call me a super nerd. I don't know if I am, but I just love learning about random stuff, right? So curiosity is so key to me, and I think it's where you're able to put two different sets of knowledge that normally would not be put together in common in what's obvious, and somehow your subconscious, when you're sleeping, when you're walking, when you're reflecting, boom, it hits. But it only came because you kept being open to the possibility of what could be. So curiosity, I think, is key for innovation. Also, persistence. I'm hard-headed, right? I think being hard-headed in getting there, not how you do things, right, but how getting there is key to innovation and being able to continue to develop that space. And then, I would say that when I get really focused, and some of you guys may also experience this, when you really love what you're doing, you get obsessed with it, and you don't let it go, and you keep working on it all the time, and that's where the iteration process happens. And then one of the things I learned that I actually put in here was a concept called the rubber band theory. And the rubber band theory, if you think about it, when you grab a rubber band from the box or the bowl or whatever, you stretch it. If you stretch it for the first time really strong, it'll pop on you, right? You ever done this before? Maybe I'm the only one, right? But then you grab a rubber band, right, and you start stretching and you start working it little by little. Next thing you know, you can get that rubber band stretched 3 or 4 or 5 times more than it was originally designed to, because you allowed that rest and stretching, that rest and stretching. So our mind is the same way, and I think that when you are able to become obsessed and then relax and then come back at it, you're able to come with fresh new ideas to that problem. The thing that a lot of people don't see when we talk about the innovation map is that so many of the key things that we have today can be repurposed. But and when I say repurposed, not just repurposed in how we're using it, but also the repurposed on who it can be serving. And so we are not thinking about how we're using things today and devices and technology to serve other people and other communities that have been left out of the conversation. So I think that's very key to think about it, which leads me to what I was saying earlier, my very favorite word of 2018, which is intersectionality. I'm trying to say that 3 times fast.
Intersectionality.
Intersectionality is the combination, really, of innovation, where you identify 2 branches of knowledge, backgrounds, people, ideas, and see what arises from that. And I think inherently that is the definition of innovation, because it gives you the uncognitive connections. And the key part, if you've done design thinking and you're familiar with these sprints, is the beauty of this rubber band theory, the convergent and divergent ways of thinking, so that you expand your mind into all the possibilities, and then you drill in, and then from there you expand out again and you drill in until you identify really the sweet spot upon where you can really innovate and let your talents do. So I did a search and I said, what are today's leading companies? And Forbes came up with a top list of 2018, right? But then I started asking, I started looking at these companies and like, what makes them truly innovative? You know, Facebook is leading with some artificial intelligence is probably touching through all of this. But what makes these companies truly innovative? What makes them stand out amongst all the other companies? Well, some of my hunches would lead me to believe that they have been able to not only understand the product market fit, but see the nuances that most companies and most leaders don't see. And how do we actually get to that point? Well, we can only start seeing things that are not apparent until when we start reflecting on what we believe is true. And so here's where I think inclusivity is key. Everyone, I'm assuming in this room, understands bias. Raise your hand if you do not know what bias is. Good. And I don't want to just judge the room, so I'm going to ask again. Does anyone here not know, well actually, can anyone give me the definition of unconscious or implicit bias? What does that mean? If the definition of bias is having a certain preference or judgment for a particular thing, person, or idea, right? What does implicit or inherent bias mean?
It's the biases that we're unaware of, that we're just like, that are basically controlling our every thoughts and movement without realizing it, maybe?
Yes, and that goes into this whole other story of, or study of NLP, right? Neuro-linguistic programming. We'll talk about that later. But a lot of the stuff that we're thinking that we're doing, we're not even conscious of. Raise your hand here if you've been, you found yourself driving home from a day of work and thinking about something, and then before you know it, you're home without even actually consciously thinking about it. Your brain is super smart. Like, it knows how to do its thing on autopilot. But here's the thing. It only knows that because of the conditioning that we've fed it and what it believes is to be real, right? And so if we do not start questioning what we think is true, we will never see the opportunities or possibilities of what can be and what can be true tomorrow. And so it's so important to have this conversation and come to the table and say, guess what, guys? As good as the person I think I am, I'm biased. Everyone here is biased. More importantly than that, I have unconscious and unhidden and inherent biases that I need to work towards, right? Some of them may show up as sexism, some of them show up as racism, like all these isms, right? And if we do not come to the table and become vulnerable and saying, I'm still a work in progress, I would need to learn from all of us, or need to learn from you, we need to learn from each other, we'll never be able to really create companies and create products that are really inclusive of everybody. That's the gist of the talk. Let's go deeper. So, how does this proliferate in our system? Biases are built on values. Values are built on key behaviors, ideas, feelings, and emotions, right? Values are something that we practice every day that are built off of routines, right? We value having good hygiene, so we take a shower every day. I'm hoping everyone takes a shower every day, right? There was a time in history where the common plumbing wasn't available, and you took a shower once a week, right? In a big tin or whatever, a big pail. So we built values, and a lot of these values become subconscious. We see certain things, we see certain people, we hear certain things that don't generate and go with our existing programming. And we're not even conscious of our programming, because check this out. A lot of our programming has been passed down from our ancestors and our parents, some who might have come from traumatic backgrounds and have created like these beliefs. I remember, and last time I told this, I made the room sad, so hopefully I don't make you sad here. I'll tell you the abbreviated version. I experienced my first real experience with racism when I was in 7th grade, and I had gone to a new middle school here in Austin, and it was integration, and we had Black, Latino, and the white community together, and I started feeling less because there are certain white preppy kids who would look at the way I dressed and the way I walked and the way I carried myself and would kind of look at me with disdain and disgust, and I was like, wait, what did I do? And I'll go home and I'm like, Mom, like, this happened at school. And then she had to sit me and come talk to me and say, son, I didn't want to have this conversation with you, but here's the situation in the world, this would exist. It's not that I didn't know that I was brown, I knew I was brown, but I didn't know that these inherent biases were being passed down to these children. And I was gonna have to deal with this for the rest of my life. I was like, that sucks. I'm a little more awake than then, but I'm friendly about it now. And I was like, what do we need to do? What do we do about this? I said, well, hopefully you grow up one day and you'll be part of the solution and you'll help bring people together. But why do I have to do this? Why can't it just be fixed already? I was like, people have been trying to fix this for a long time, son. But maybe that's why you're born this way. And I was like, thanks, Mom. So we have to understand our personal beliefs, and then we have to understand how they manifest in the world with or without us knowing. And the only way to do that, and one of the best ways that I've learned how to do that, is to journal. And as of recently, or the past couple of years, I just started like making my journal public, right? Like I just post on Facebook everything I'm feeling, and then I want to put into the world. People are like, the ones that are weird, I think sometimes people think I'm weird, but most people have been resonant to it, and I appreciate it of it. But it's also helping me understand who I am in the world and understand the programming that I want to integrate into my life. So actually, you know how Facebook recalls things you have done or said or written like years past? It happened to me today. I was like reading something I wrote last year. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I should read. I started reposting this, so if you go follow me on Facebook, you can read it. But ultimately, the reason I share that is we need to, if we really want to change the world, we want to create great products, we want to create great companies, we must be very sober and truthful to our biases and understanding our programming. And if we're not constantly looking in the mirror and calling our BS, right, then we will continue to create products that keep people out. And then they will be amplified, and then that's where we get into this point. See, culture, right? The word culture is created from the word cult, a grouping of things, right? So you can have a culture of bacteria, right? They all gather together. Systems, well, let me get your definition. What is the definition of a system to you guys? How would you define a system? I think systems are a set of processes, instructions, steps that when put together deliver a certain type of output. Well, if we're all programmed through certain values, that's going to create a certain type of lifestyle that I create. But guess what? I have influence on the people around me. So I have influence around people in my family and the people I interact with on a daily basis. And so if we have a value set that says children should not be used as child labor, we create a system that doesn't allow that element into our being, right, into our daily practice. But if we say, hey, if you happen to be brown and you get shot by the cops, that's part of the system. We're going to allow some of that to happen. Hey, cops have a hard job. They're fearful of their life. What you going to do about it? We're allowing these values to be created into our system. So the reason I set that up is I then ask, are systems inherently bad or good? I just want to see if y'all have fun with me a little bit. Neither. It is, the systems are the byproduct of the creator. And are people inherently bad or good?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And so, how can you have a perfect system? I don't believe in perfection, I believe in progress. So I think you're going to have a system that's learning to progress and mind for everything that is inherently inefficient. I think I'm being biased here, right? I think police killings without accountability to people of color might need to be addressed, right? So, there we go. We just talked about that. Okay, so I love James Clear. If you get to read his blog, this dude's a genius. After the talk, if you get a chance, we'll talk about the 1% rule that he has. It's really cool about how he tells a story about how True to France winners won. I'll read this to you, and I know you can read it yourself, but I'll just read it out loud. He says, the purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. Right? So in this argument, in this blog he wrote about, is like, a lot of people are like, we gotta be goal-oriented. In order to change the world, we have to change ourselves and be goal-oriented. But inherently, it's really about affecting the system, not just affecting one tiny goal, right? Because we have to understand how to become systems thinkers, and we're in a design meetup, so hopefully we're all design thinkers. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's not about any single accomplishment. It's about the cycle of the endless refinement and continuous improvement. Ultimately, it's your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. And so I ask you today, is it possible to change the world? Can any one person change the world? That's why I got it depends over here. Some people are nodding saying yes.
Yeah.
Let's drill down a little bit. Well,
Sure, to a certain degree, or in a particular culture,
so that's
country.
That's the typical yes answer. But here's the thing that really wins out. It's the boldness and the courageousness of the idea and the person that is behind it that is willing to stay and stick to their ground, that it continues to push that idea forward and forward and forward till next it becomes common culture, and it's accepted as norm, it's accepted as dogma and religion. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that we will be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. We're slowly getting there, but we're still getting there, right? This idea, yes, Matt, yes, sir.
I just was pulling quotes off the book I was reading in the last couple of weeks. And the quote that struck me here was, we must remember that one determined person can make a significant difference, and that a small group of determined people can change the course of history.
Margaret Mead.
Sonia Johnson was the reference here.
Oh, okay. Very similar. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so I share that to say is that we're not playing, we're ready to play the game yet. We're going to play the game. We must look at the possibility that every single one of us can change the world. When we work in unison around a common set of values, like the Constitution said, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? All men are created equal in the eyes of God. Well, if that's the case, how have we actually created a system that upholds this? Or was it initially created, and we gotta be sober about it, not to really include everybody? Because some people were considered 3/5 human beings, right? And we should just talk about it. We should not forget about it. They're like, oh, so they had really noble aspirations, but they really weren't inherent and integral about the way they're going about it. Because our founding fathers had slavery. They had slaves, and they promoted slavery. I was like, oh, so you can have good and bad in the same person, and those values will come out and create systems that have good and bad in them as well. It's only a reflection. So companies really are only a reflection of the founders. Nations are a reflection of the people that promote it and the founding fathers. Let's play a game. So, let me see how many people we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Lily, you can pair with me. I want you to find a partner. And here's what we're going to do. I normally do this with a couple of people standing on stage, and then I quiz them. But I actually want to try this as a new way of experimenting. I want you to get to know each other. Raise your hand here if you know. You guys don't count. You got to switch up. If y'all know each other, you got to switch up. Okay. Raise your hand here if you know anyone else in this room. If you know anyone else in this room, you try not to talk to them. You want to find someone you do not know. And we're going to get to know and have a real conversation with them. And here's why. I have served as the CMO for startups prior to coming to UT, and branding is a central core aspect that I talk about a lot, and how to build strong brands that are respectable and sustainable and people care about, and how we can change the world. So in this game, this branding game, we're going to talk about how to identify and create a product for your market. Raise your hand here if you do not understand customer segmentation. Okay, customer segmentation. Customer segmentation is the process upon which you identify a key customer group that you decide to go after and understand more about, so that the product or service that you're building is able to meet the needs and the pains of that customer group. They can be fleshed out in age group, gender, location, geography, or overlaid all those things together, the psychographics and the demographics together. And so when you create those different combinations, you're like, my core segment is middle-aged moms who live in middle America, specifically Iowa, who smoke and drink and have 2 kids. You're like, what the heck? What are you creating for them?
Candy Crush.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Candy Crush or whatever, right? So the reason it's important is that we're going to understand what our customer is. And so, so what I want to like you to do is, I'll explain it first and then we'll do it. We're going to choose a partner. We're going to ask the partner 5 questions that I'm going to give you in a second. And then I want you to build, so we'll take turns. I want you to build for your customer or your partner, right? An experience of the future that they would rave about. And if you have a notepad or whatever, we'll sketch it out for them and tell a story. So we'll interview them with these 5 questions, and then we'll go off and create something that we believe will ideate. In the design process, we call it ideation. And we'll design something that we believe will have them raving about. So these core 5 questions are only a preliminary conversation starter, but the goal is, can you sit down with your customer, your user, your partner, let go of all your biases, make sure you're truly listening to what they're telling you, and create something that will create such an emotional appeal between the 2 of you that when you come back, you're like, I want to give this to you. And then like, oh my God. And so what we're going to do, we'll exchange back and we'll get feedback. And then we're going to ask each other if the product that they created for each other, the product we created for each other, had biases. That, because it's interesting it's sometimes when you say something and you hear it back, like, that's not exactly what I said. And so I just want you to see how biases work in a very simple, straightforward game, and get to know each other. And this way, you'll be able to walk away with a new friend at the end of this thing. So if there's anything you walk away with a new friend. How's that? Cool. So how do I do this? Is a responsible way to just name people off like 1, 2, 1, 2? Or should you all kind of be adults and figure out how to get into partners yourself? I trust you. Figure out how to become partners yourself. When you're in partners, wait for me when you're all settled, and then I'll give you questions.
Yeah. My name is Ryan.
Kate, very nice to meet you.
I have a solid boy. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. All right. Let me know when you're settled so I can hear your questions.
We don't know the questions yet, correct?
Nope, you don't know the questions yet.
Is everybody like? Yeah.
So, we're going to give each other 5 minutes to listen, and then we'll flip and we'll listen again to the other person, okay? Actually, 3 minutes. I'll time it, 3 minutes. That way it should be enough. 5 questions. Ready? First question.
Would you like to start?
What is a region that you would love to see that you've never been to? 1. What is an activity that you would love to do that you've never done before? So remember, so you're not writing this down for yourself, but you can write the questions down. Sorry, so when I say don't answer the questions for yourself yet, the other person is going to try to describe something for you, create something for you from the conversation. But definitely write the questions down. So what is a region you'd like to see? What activity would you like to do? If you could take anyone with you, who would you take? What other secret element? This is a wild card that you could add to this adventure that you would add that no one can think about. Like this is your own original thing. And finally, number 5, how would you best record and document this journey of this trip? Right? So these are the 5 questions.
So where would we go?
So I'll start the timer now. It's 7:47. At 7:50, we'll come back and we'll flip it to the other side. So talk to them, see if you can make an emotional connection, and see what you find out.
Region that I've never been.
Where would you be?
I really want to experience Australia area.
What activity would you like to do?
What is a region that you'd like to see you've never been to? Activity that you've never done? Yeah, who would you take? What wild cards would you add? And how would you document it?
What is a region that you
Who would you take?
What is a good
Activity that I'd like to do that I've never done before.
in that region that you've never experienced? Who would you take, if anyone?
What is a
And
wild
what's
card?
the wild card? What would you document? Okay, do you want to share that?
How would you like to report? What was it?
Secret ingredient, my wild card.
One minute. Tell me.
Oh, that's how we're supposed to have a wild card question.
Ah, okay.
Is that it? Is that what it is?
He's got it like, I have to create the experience and give me something to play with.
How would I document best document it? I would document it through video. Landscape and beautiful parts of it. I would try to experience the fun, the time
Time. All right. How do you guys feel? The first one? And then we'll switch it, and we'll start now. And at 7:54, I'll come back, and then we're gonna go into our creation process. Cool? Let's go.
But I mean, that actually could be cool when you learn to have that experience. Who would you pick right now? I probably would say my friend Sarah. It's everything else. Video journal of it. So
I like to go.
Yeah, because I don't sell. You can drive by yourself. Yeah, like 5 kilos of
Yeah.
like 10 pounds of plastic. I think that would be easier or more fun. I really would like, I don't know if it was possible.
Don't judge. You're being biased.
Every time I have 3D camera.
And how would you record?
Design something for each other.
like
I would
everything like shoot out no reservations whatever you can.
Let me go back to why, I guess, the first question would be, what about the water?
Time.
I don't like water a lot.
Alright.
I mean, the sea.
What I love about this exercise is that we really get to know each other. Here's what I always learn about this. There's never been the one time, I've done this like a dozen times. There's never been a time where I set this up and people just literally are dying to stop talking to each other. Which gives me hope for people. Because we realize, either that or I'm just biased to Austin because we love each other. Right? But we really want to invest in each other. And if we just give ourselves time to learn about one another, imagine how many problems we can solve. Right? But I believe, and I'm just going on a tangent here, I believe that because we are not talking to each other, we are more divided than ever before, and we really aren't really that divided if we truly start thinking about how to talk to each other, because we can learn so much from each other, regardless of political background, religious background, etc. Like, we're really human beings that we appreciate each other's company. So that being said, now it is your turn to create this amazing emotional gift and experience for your partner. So you do not talk to each other anymore. You go into your ideation phase, and you sketch out an experience. And you don't have to be a sketch artist. And you can be like stick figures and really simple stuff. But what would this keepsake that you would create for them, or an artifact of the experience that you would like to create for them? Right? So think about how from everything that you learned from your partner, what would be something that you could sketch out, do, or leave behind that would tell the story about the experience that you could create for them that they would rave about? And so the core I guess I'm giving you the secret here, right? They told you what they wanted. But if you got to know them a little bit better, you may go a little further and say, oh, they said they wanted this, but normally people who say this, they may want that. Like, can you take it a step further and understand the implications and insights behind what they're telling you, so that you might be able to see how you can use your imagination to blow them away? So, any questions about that? Cool. Let's go to work.
How much time do we have?
4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
You got things to do.
Oh boy.
1 minute. Time. Or as my teacher used to say, pencils down. Hated that. So now the hope is in the next minute, take a minute, the first person who interviewed, to explain to your partner what you created and give feedback from it. And then in the next minute after that, we'll do the same thing around. And then we'll share and we'll identify if the bias of the partner that drew something for you came through. Because they're going to create something from their own lens. And you're going to see if they hit the mark or totally missed it. Okay? So go, give yourself 1 minute to give feedback.
So what I want to do is you will arrive to this place. Probably you will make a picture.
I told you. Alright, time.
Now we share.
Now we share with the other person.
Basically, I was started off with you arriving to a private chartered plane with try to help you reach towards remind us really towards light where you could possibly internalize and face the fear of the water larger fear and that's where I'm at. Bring your dog along because dogs pretty much the only thing we have unconditional. And whatever we send, we need to you want to be able to experience it on your own, but you also want to be able to enjoy Did I get close? Yeah.
All right. Can you guys volunteer? I already found biases from myself and from her. And I guess I'll put myself. I have the biases of what I created for her, a safari for 2 in Hawaii, all-inclusive package. And we would go see, they would go see all the animals. I forgot the snorkeling part, I apologize. But it was a little bit extravagant and lavish, because my value is, I may not live like a king every day, but when I do go out, we're gonna live it up, because I do that every day. So that's a bias and a value of myself. And you wanna share yours?
Sure. So I created for Ruben a personalized person who's going to take him on a 1-month tour of South Asia, who will introduce him to business and personal connections, as well as fly his personal jet everywhere he wants to go, and documentary style film and photograph the entire experience.
That's one person. And I was like, wait.
Multi-talented.
That's multi-talented. And I'm like, shouldn't we spend a little bit more money to just have more people come? Like, no. Let's be more efficient, right? And so, like, as you can see, there's different value sets, right? So she valued being more efficient and more effective with the resources. And I was like, whatever. Let's go have fun, right? What kind of biases did y'all find from each other?
Yeah, I don't know. We mostly had positive feedback for each other.
Okay. So tell me what y'all came up with.
For her, I came up with a physical artifact that was half filled in and half empty. It was kind of a guide of her and her sister's trip through Southeast Asia, and it was a place for her to learn about the things we're going to do that day, and also to put in photographs and take journal notes while they did that. Something for her and her sister to build.
Did he hit the mark, or did he miss the mark? How close he was to it?
Yeah, I thought he was very attentive because he chose to do something that was archival, because I wanted to incorporate many Fujifilm photos during that trip, so it was helpful.
And tell me, would you have done it the way that he did it? What biases and values did you see in his creation that maybe you didn't concur with, or you didn't pick up on? The way he interpreted it, he created it in a certain kind of way for you.
Well, there's a lot of active listening. The only thing I had said was, since it was important for me to bring my sister, maybe talking about in the product, what part would be for me to use in it, and what part would be for my sister, since it's for 2 people, really.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to share what they created for their partner, and the other partner identify if there was any biases that came through? Back? Yes.
Yeah. So, you want to share what you created?
You can start first.
Okay. So, basically, I created an experience for him to travel to Southeast Asia, specifically to go freediving in Bali. And it's going to start out with him on a private chartered jet with his own personal Buddhist monk that is going to try to help him get to higher levels of enlightenment. Also, his dog is his companion on this trip. The wild card that this monk also brings at the beginning is a suitcase full of 5 kilos of Grover Clevelands, so that you don't have to worry about the cost of the experiences, and it's easier to do what you want. And yeah, that's what I created.
So how do you feel that, thank you, how do you feel that the biases came through? Did he hit it on the mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will enjoy the experience. I think like he's a really spiritual person, and the monk part. I mean, I'm from Mexico, so I'm Catholic. No, I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I think it's something like he would like by himself. But I really like it. Well, I will tell you mine, and you will, and you can. What I was planning, it was a little bit more invasive. Like I will say Corey to watch Lord of the Rings movie, and he would like to go to New Zealand. So when I detect like the pupil goes wide, I will drop him, and the next day he will skydiving with his friend and a team in this amazing landscape, and he will enjoy several days there camping and surviving to go to the civilization. And I think so he can take all the pictures. And
how did he do in terms of did he nail the mark?
So I guess in identifying the biases, first thing I would say would be why Lord of the Rings. Like, how do you know that I'm gonna internalize or enjoy that in the same way? And I would also question the value of the surprise in the experience and why you're going off of unconscious cues to create it.
Thank you so much. Give yourself a round of applause. The reason that I want you to see this is designing and building a brand are analogous to one another. I alluded to a great conversation. I don't know if you've ever gone on a date or even with your significant other throughout the day where you just have the time of your life by having a conversation and you're like, dang, it's midnight, we should probably go to bed, right? And you just get lost because the conversation is yes and. And so much of the design process and building a brand is about the emotional relationship that you create with the other person. And there's no way you can truly serve a customer if you have not gotten to know them, right? So if Prada, I think it was Prada, no, if Gucci a couple of weeks ago or a month ago would have really have spent time understanding the cultural sensitivities of blackface, they would have never ever dared come out with a product like that. But it's 2019, and we're still having to educate people about the wrongness of blackface, right? Now, we all can look in this room like, yeah, stupid Gucci, right? But we have ourselves biases, that we are like, oh, I don't want anyone to know about this because then they're going to think I'm dumb. It's a lesson learned for all of us as a country, but we must do better in having this conversation and put all of our efforts. I'm not more perfect than you are, but I understand that we have work to do. And that is what leads me to this slide. Because until we truly understand our customer and the various nuances, right? So you're a Catholic, not a Buddhist, right? So you're raised Catholicism. So that is a particular identity, an intersection of what you see. You identify as a straight male. I'm here. I'm assuming. I'm not sure. Yes. So you identify as straight male, a Catholic who lives in the United States, right? So there's all these various intersections that he sees the world as, that we see as our apparent to him, but there may be things that we don't see that he's identifying with. And it's our job to be able to do the most work that's possible so that we get to the bottom of our customer and the nuances. Because when we can do that, then we can create experiences that blow their socks off. Isn't it amazing when you come home and your significant others like cook dinner for you or done something amazing, right? Like, and you're just like, oh my God, he knows me or she knows me better than anyone else. It is that emotional, intimate relationship that we're trying to strive to create. So a lot of us, however, in the startup world, I'm gonna go start a company because I'm tired of working for people, right? And we get really, really passionate about our solution and what we want to create because I'm gonna matter in the world and my life's gonna mean something and people are gonna love what I do. And that's nothing wrong with positive thinking. But if we stop thinking about who we're serving and putting them first and foremost, you know, I talk to a lot of people who've been married like for 50 years or more, and they're like, one of the best advices is one is kindness, but two, they never take the other person for granted. They continue working every day to reestablish and reinvigorate that relationship with the love that it needs to continue going. And so, who are you here to serve, and how are you building that relationship every day? So I think this is, as we would take marriage lessons or relationship advice, we should also do it for our customers. Because if we get real passionate about them and the issues that they're dealing with, and help becoming there for them, then they'll create a national loyalty and tie for us because we're really serving a need for them. This is one of the things I love watching. So everyone knows Donald Rumsfeld, right? Mm-hmm. Let's do it, please.
There are reports that there is no evidence of a direct link between Baghdad and some of these terrorist organizations.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there's some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not
several unknowns, and I'm just wondering if this is an unknown.
I'm not going to say which it is.
But, Mr. Secretary,
right here. Right here.
Now, when I heard that he actually did that day, I was like, this is the biggest bull around. Wow. But he actually was onto something. And so, I'm going to show you the Rumsfeld matrix that I talk about. Raise your hand here if you know the Rumsfeld matrix. All right, check it out, It's so So let's look at who is at the table, and more importantly, who is not at the table. Because a lot of times, like last year I created Austin's first ever diversity and inclusion awards for corporations called the Mosaic Awards. And we had the Mayor Adler keynote, and he stood on stage and said, look at all this beautiful room of diversity. I want Austin to look like this one day. But I want your white person in this room that when you leave this event tonight and you go about your life and you go to a restaurant, I want you to walk into a restaurant and see how many people of color you see in the room. Because I can guarantee you, as a person of color, they walk into a restaurant and a place of public or the business, and they're always seeing if there's anyone that looks like them. Because we all seek to be connected, and we take this for granted or as a privilege, that the world is just what it is. And that's not true. And so we need to be able to have a more inclusive and diverse city, because that's the future. And all the people of color, and I'm sort of like, what? He said, what? Oh my God, that was a lot of courage for him to say something like that. And the reason I share that with you is that he's understanding that in order for us to be a better city, we need to be very intentional about making sure that a lot more people are at the table. And it is upon us to be able to carry that message and become very vocal about it, saying, hey, before we make this decision on this, who is not at the table? Oh no, we don't want to be more table because it's going to make it hard to make a decision. Yeah, but if they deserve a seat at the table, they need to be here. Because we don't know our blind spots. We're going to be creating something that totally misses the mark for our user, right? And if we're creating solutions for our city and our community, how are we going to be able to do that? And then the next thing is, what is that we're seeing that we don't know? So let me see here, and there we go. Oh, sorry, too fast. By the way, there's so much I want to keep going. Is this still entertaining? You're still learning some stuff? Good? Like, okay, so I have like, how much time do I have? It's 8:16.
9 until kick out.
Okay, perfect. We'll make it through. I'm gonna speed it up. But like as you can tell, I get real passionate about talking about these things. So this is a Rumsfeld matrix, and you can Google this and it's like type in known unknowns and it'll like pop up in images. But the known knowns are things that we are aware of and we understand. Like, we are aware that the sky is blue because of fragmentation of light, right? We become aware of that. But then there's the known unknowns, things that we are aware of that we don't understand. But we don't understand necessarily how, let's say, I'm just trying to make this up again. I'm going off the cuff here. We don't understand how black holes truly work, right? We kind of get a concept. We've got these theories about it. We have some images. We know that they exist now, right? We spotted them, but we don't really know what happens when you get sucked in, right? And how far you stretch as a little thin layer of light, right? And then there's the unknown knowns, things that we understand, but we are not aware of. So sometimes I deal with this with like emotions, right? Sometimes we're feeling things, but if we're not versatile in knowing how to speak about our emotions, we might be feeling some kind of way. In hip hop, we have this phrase called "all up in my feelings," right? Because we don't even have the vernacular to be able to fully express our feelings. But we may be experiencing love or frustration, but we don't know actually how to express that. So things that we understand, but we're not aware that we're consciously feeling them. So like we know that there's something there, but it's not quite clear. And then here's the true void, right? The unknown unknowns. Things that we are neither aware of and nor do we understand. And currently, I think we are somewhere between the unknown knowns and unknown unknowns in terms of diversity and innovation. Because we've been creating products for people that we are aware of, that we understand. And some of us have even been creating products for things that people that we're aware of and we don't understand really well, right? You're like, oh, well, this should fit them anyway, right? Oh, we should create this product for them. That, we'll just try it out. And we're not doing it with true empathy. And so until we start bringing more of this void up into this upper quadrant, we won't really be serving justice and equity for all. So then I'm like, okay, well, where's the new opportunity? How do we actually start creating products of the future? Who are the growing markets? So here's a list of the world's biggest economies from 2019 and 2020. And you see the GDP growth and the nominal GDP per trillion. So US is still the market to win in, but if I was a betting man, I would put a lot of money China, India, and potentially Brazil, because I see their numbers ticking upwards, and I see that there's an opportunity for them to catch up and play. But if I want to play on a global market and I want to create products for them, shouldn't I actually be interfacing and talking to them, right? Or figuring out how to build trade with them? But we don't do that. We're just like, we're going to create we're going to create McDonald's and we're going to ship it all over the world. And that's why in Bolivia, McDonald's failed, right? Because people not only could not afford it, but it wasn't the quality product, and they could eat better and cheaper elsewhere on the street than going to McDonald's. And so they failed to understand their market because they feel that everyone wants our hamburgers, and like, nah, bro, it don't work that way. So here's the fastest emerging markets. Africa's on the rise. So if you're thinking about starting a business, where is the greatest room for opportunity? What problems do they need to be solved? Here's what I like a lot. Ladies, this is for you. Texas is the #1 state for women entrepreneurs for the year 2019. So if you're a woman and you want to start a business, Texas is the best place for you to do that. Now, here's a more sensitive conversation that leads into the product development, but it also has a social justice angle. If we create a better and inclusive economy that innovates, then we have to understand the realms between equity and equality. Now, some people are like, oh, they're synonymous. Equity and equality are the same thing. As long as we work on creating a better equal world, then we won't have to worry about anything. Let's really get to the bottom of it. The world is an exchange of value, ideas, and people. Mainly value, and originally ideas. Ideas become value, and then they're transported in forms of people and businesses. However, if value is at the center, one of the biggest holders of value is economic value, right? And financial value. I was telling Kate, this is a stat of 2 years ago. The average American white family in the United States has about $185,000 of wealth. Average family, white family. For the respective Latino and black family, it's about 4,000 and 3,000. Those numbers are actually growing and dividing even more. Like, oh my God, you're like breaking my heart. I'm not here to break your heart and make anyone guilty. This is not your fault specifically. But if we're talking about creating a better world, how we understand why that divide exists. Oh, well, because some people don't want to work harder. That's not true. Like, there's more context in that. One is education levels. One is home ownership. And then 3 is the access to jobs and the skill sets. For the longest time, you did what your parents did, right? And we still have that to a certain extent. We get opportunities based on our social network. And if Daddy has a friend that works at Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch, guess what? I got an internship for that, right? And we get to slide into this funnel. It's like the Plinko, like ding, 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 and then you end up on the right side, right? We didn't get to choose the color of skin we were born in or the background, but this exists. And we created systems that have continued to perpetuate this. So the difference between equality and equity is equity is about ownership. And we talk about where the wealth is stored and held in America. We can look at the numbers and they don't lie. Now, I'm not here crying a pity party like, oh, that's not fair. No, we all want to contribute to a country. We will. And there's a great opportunity to fix this. And the new economy is serving these new emerging markets, as I just showed you in the previous slides, and also in our country. And so we all want to continue being prosperous. We need to figure out how to get more people at the table so that we're not really talking about equality, because equality is, oh, look, everybody has a little bit of something. But yeah, some people are starting from way further behind. And actually, I think equity shouldn't really be, that's actually pretty accurate. I think there should actually be a hole, like literally, there's a hole that's been dug in and they're still trying to make themselves out. I am now moved on to this conversation about liberation. And I've become a little bit more radical about it. Not in a negative, terroristic way, but in a way of like, I'm here to liberate minds. That's the work I'm doing at UT. I'm here to teach these students. I don't care where you come from. I do care in a historical context, but I don't want you to use that only as like, well, poor me. Yes, if this existed, yes, we need to fix it. I need you to start changing your mindset. Because if we do not become contributors of the new economy, we're going to continually be crying about like, poor me, poor me. We are trying to address these inequities, but I need you to be a player in the system. They're like, well, why should I be a player in this system that's been not created to be inclusive for me? Because it's what we have right now. And once you get into the position of power, then we can help build it and better it together. Yes?
What companies currently in Austin do you feel are doing a good job role modeling, having more diversity in the tech sector?
We told me not.
We tell me not. Okay.
HomeAway and WP Engine here in Austin.
Okay.
Sorry, not trying to get on my soapbox. I just think it's important that some people are like, no, you should talk about this and this and that. We need to talk about this. Innovation is everywhere. And so I'm at the intersectionality of innovation and inclusivity. So that's what you're going to get with me. What could innovation truly look like if we actually put it in play? Well, I want to introduce you to our local family here in town called the Siete group, the Siete family group. And they are the ones that make these potato chips. I mean, not tortilla chips. They just got $90 million for tortilla chips.
They're gluten-free.
They're gluten-free. They understood the market, they understood the demand, and they're killing the game. That's the future. We need to focus on helping create more of those. If we're going to create a better world, it's not us against you, it's us together. There's no us or they, it's a we. But we need to understand what the new opportunities lie. So like I tell people, stop falling in love with the customer, fall in love with the problem. So as now we talk about systems, it's so important for us to be able to distinguish the difference between, are we creating problems to address the symptom, or are we really leveraging our ability to understand the root causes? Man, but that's so complicated. How do you even solve for racism? I'm like, well, hold on. You got to do it by yourself, and you got to do it overnight. We can't start addressing symptoms. But if we collectively share notes and share across the board and create an interdependence mindset, and when I mean interdependence, meaning that we all need each other, we all have things to offer to help us become smarter, and we start talking to each other, we can get to the system and the core values of why it was created so we can make it better. Because ultimately, I believe, and I still tell, that we all deserve a space at the table. Does anyone know who this person on this screen is? That is Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker is the first African-American millionaire in the United States. Do you all know why she became a millionaire? She took it upon herself to create her own line of hair products. And she served her community, and she served it well, when no one else was willing to serve them. And she made bank. Right? And her family set the legacy moving to the future. Her granddaughter's still around. I say, look between the lines and the cracks for the unseen opportunity. Because if you're looking for innovation, it's within your lived experience and those who you are serving. But well, hold on. If the new innovation is happening in communities that I'm not part of, then how am I going to be part of it? Well, then go and become part of those communities. Go see where the opportunity's at. No, don't make it about you. Make it about we, and start serving those communities so we can design things that empower and uplift people. And give them the tools so they can fish too. Now, I may actually skip over this. This goes into more marketing strategy about how to create inclusivity and exclusive ideas and the pros and cons of it. But because I want to get through the thing, we're going to skip this right now. And if you want this, I'll give you the slides later. It's not a big deal. Yeah. So branding and design is about building an emotional connection. If you are not thoroughly obsessed and in love, not with your brand, but with your customer, your brand will never stand a chance. Because the brand is a reflection of the values that meet your customer's needs. And it should evoke a visceral, and I say this in an intense emotion that you cannot deny when you see this. When I say the word, or when I say the phrase Coca-Cola, someone look at me? Okay, great. When I say the word Coca-Cola, what are some of the synonyms that come to your mind? Some of us are not soda drinkers anymore. But this brand is one of the most popular brand in the world. What comes to mind when you hear it?
Polar bears.
Sugar.
Santa
Soda.
Claus.
How come none of you are saying the marketing terms like, you know, was it?
I said joy.
It's a joy.
Polar bear.
The reason I'm bringing this up.
The sign for Coca-Cola.
The sign for Coca-Cola, yeah. The reason I bring this up is I grew up obviously in a Latino home, in a Mexican household, and Coca-Cola growing up was everywhere. If you were Mexican if you didn't have Coca-Cola. And more importantly, you didn't have Mexican Coca-Cola with real sugar, right? And it wasn't a big deal. Like, that was the way we grew up. But the reason I bring it up is we identified. It was like, yes, it is the thing we do. And some people would drink several Coca-Colas in a day. And then we realized how much diabetes is affecting the Latino community. And then Coca-Cola should be a responsible part of it, right? But hey, this is American, this is a free car league. People have the decisions. Yeah, but we designed this product knowing what the disaster or issues could. Well, everything, there's bad with everything, Ruben. There's like, you can't avoid it. True, but if we create better products that are able to serve more people and do it in a more conscious way, we wouldn't have this diabetes epidemic in the community. I'm not blaming it all on Coca-Cola. I'm blaming it on the industry of sugar, right? But now we become smarter. Most of us don't, like most of us don't smoke, I think. Most of us don't drink soda because we know the damages of it. So, how do we combine the two? How would we go about creating a brand that could help cross the chasm? Actually, I'm not going to cover this. I can, but this is more about marketing strategy. But I do like this one. So, let me tell you a story about this. My family lives in Matamoros. And growing up in Matamoros as a kid, we go to the little convenience store down the corner, and we go pick up some bolis, which is like frozen popsicles, and some Topo Chico. And Topo Chico is not a big deal because like that was like the Mexican brand of like carbonated water when carbonated water wasn't a thing. Or over here you have Le Perrier or some crazy. I don't even know what it was. I was like, oh, it's the same thing. I was like, why did they make it so confusing? Anyway, that's a long story short. About 2 or 3 years ago, I had my friends coming up to me like and hang out with me and say, hey bro, you want a Topo? I'm like, what? And mind you, I hadn't heard this. I'm like, yeah, like bro, a Topo. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what is a Topo? I'm like, a Topo Chico. Oh, Topo Chico. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll take one. Yeah, man, this is like the best water. Have you heard of this? I'm like, yeah, like we grew up drinking this. Like, really? You had this all your life and you didn't tell me? Like, what's the big deal? It's like, it's the best fizzy bubble water there is. I was like, why are you so passionate about bubble fizz? Because, you know, sugar's bad for you. I was like, okay, cool. Like, you just add some lemon to it, and you're good. And I was like, yeah, we used to do this and drink it for a quarter a bottle. Now, I think a bottle is like $4 or some crazy astronomical price. So the reason I bring this up, remember I talked about the elements of innovation and timing? Is Topo innovative?
No, but it serves Coca-Cola's needs.
It serves Coca-Cola's needs. But by definition, by staying the course and being at the right position in time, remember the innovation matrix? Right there? It was repurposed and found a new audience, a new segmentation. It was innovative to that new market that had never heard of it. But it's been around forever, right? And so I'm challenging you the way to see how inclusivity and innovation cross and intersect. Because to me, Topo Chico is not innovative. It's the same old thing, which is great. They just stayed steady and true, and they sold out and they exited. Great, good for them. But we have to understand the context upon which we're creating the product or the product is served. So all I'm trying to do is help you see it through a better lens. Innovative opportunities are truly all around us, but we have to shift our biases and attachments to it so we can see from the existing problems, because when we do that, that's when we can see new solutions. So here's what I would do for companies who are innovating, mainstream companies. First and foremost, if you're a big company, create an innovation lab. If you don't have one, why not? 2, explore niche markets and use intersectionality and empathy at its core to do that. Allow for plenty experimentation and failure. Create alignment with product leadership of why this new product line is important and for the direction of the company. When at all possible, place diverse leadership, asterisk, at the top of the product line, especially if those products are targeted to underserved communities. That way you don't end up like Gucci. Create key metrics and goals that the whole company drives towards. And become as passionate about diversity and inclusion as you are about the products. If it's an afterthought, you will waste money and ultimately fail. I sat down with the head of Apple Diversity last month, and I heard something surprising I never thought I would hear from her. And she says, yeah, we want all of our employees to be as passionate about diversity and inclusion as they are about our products. Like, that's pretty bold. Like, really? Like, yeah, because if we get this right, we'll continue to stay at the top. I was like, oh, thank you. That's, from a company that I used to work for, I appreciate you saying that. This is what I would say for niche companies. Celebrate your adaptability and diversity at every touch point. That's your competitive advantage. So if you're not a big player, this is your competitive advantage. Thank you for coming. Sorry. Create a movement of ardent champions for your product. Become obsessed with the key problems the mainstream companies cannot and have not been solving. When you do that, you can build an allure and identity behind the product. Create a unique and intimate space where you get to know your base and incentivize that feedback loop. So here are some companies that are leading in inclusivity and innovation. In 2017, and some of my students are actually proof of this because I think some of you guys have met my students. In 2017 alone, Accenture added 1,800 employees from diverse backgrounds, up from approximately 1,000 in 2016, and increased the number of women in their workforce from 36 to 37 with a goal of hitting 40% by 2020. The company also hired 750 veterans and military spouses, bringing them halfway to their goal of hiring 5,000 by 2020. Lyft says Chief Diversity Officer Nico Thomas has piloted a program called RICH, Race, Identity, Culture, and Heritage, a group for Lyft employees to learn how to have difficult conversations surrounding race in the workplace. Quote, in the era of Me Too, we want to make sure that we've gone beyond what our compliance obligations are, and we are really sensitive to what can happen to marginalized and vulnerable groups. I was having this conversation earlier today, and I want to show you what an innovative company looks like. There's a difference. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if you're going to include ageism concerns in any of this.
Yes, ageism is a group that is being addressed. However, I just showed my bias, right? Because it's obviously not something that's affecting me. So I'm glad that you called it out, right? Because a lot of my friends are experiencing this. And we need to figure out how to still keep everyone relevant in their opinion at the table. So I need to do a better job of doing that. I think I said that in the beginning too. I said I have a lot of isms and I need to work towards. My point, what I was about to make in a second, was I had this conversation earlier, and I do some business coaching, and I was helping this person go through some of the personal issues they're having with their boss. And in the culture that they have, everyone's really nitpicky about following every single rule, but there's a lot of passive aggressiveness and a negative culture in that company. And I told her, what you're experiencing here is a typical cultural syndrome of compliance versus commitment. And what I mean by that is, when you have created a culture of innovation and freedom and ability to experiment and fail, you have a commitment towards the larger goal and cause. When you created a system of regulations, policies, and procedures, you create a culture of compliance. And when people are in a compliance mindset, they are not willing to experiment. And they're not willing to try new things, even if the system is broken, because they don't want to get booted out of the system. So think about when you design, how are we designing systems and processes that are allowing for that open innovation to happen? So investing in inclusivity is a daily practice. So before you assume anything, one second. So before you assume, one here is key. If we see contempt in our partners, we're seeing them as vague, and it doesn't allow us to build trust, and we will never be able to build that bridge across. Ensure that no one is left out of the conversation. Make space to empower ownership to those who have not had a seat at the table. Create a culture where no ideas are considered bad ideas, but rather ingredients to greater ideas. And create a journal that helps reflect on the challenges and biases you face that day and how you work through those issues. So action steps. If you want to create an inclusive and innovative economy, an innovative company, create alignment and determine where the equity gap is in your company in all forms, including ageism. Remember, as much as we want to push more D&I hires, well, we're trying to hire them. You know, we're trying to get them as fast as we can. We just can't find enough. Yeah, but it also starts at the top. You can talk about we can do the lazy D&I, right? Look, we're hiring more people, and then they get stuck in middle management because everyone's trying to ride their way to the sunset, and we never actually see change at the top. So we need to push and make room for people at the very top. Middle management needs to buy in. If middle management ultimately sees how they win by moving and making room and allowing more people through without sacrificing their positions of power, they'll come on board. But right now it's a fear-based mentality of like, I know this is the right thing to do, but shoot, I need to feed my family, so y'all figure it out on your own. And we just continue to perpetuate the problem. Innovation must be practiced at every level. We need to create a routine of innovation weekends or retreats. If you work at a company and they're not having innovation weekends or retreats at least quarterly, like, why are you there? And celebrate the discovery of new problems. So a lot of people live in work companies like, oh my God, I don't want to let people know about this problem because they're going to think it's going to blame it on me. But if you work in a company where you celebrate like, oh my God, I'm so happy you found this glitch in this system, now we can actually put our resources to make it better so that we stay ahead of the competition. And you'll notice that in the difference of the leadership at the very top. So, hey, we made record time, right on time. That is the summary of how we can actually create more innovative and inclusive companies. I thank you very much for allowing me to take you through this hour and a half journey, even though I didn't get to go through every single slide, to share how we can collaborate and work together. I want Austin to go from being known as the most economically segregated and disparate city in the country to becoming the most equitable and inclusive city in the country. That's why I'm having this conversation with you today. And I'm asking you, if you're brave enough, join with me so we can do it together. I can't do this by myself. I'm just crazy enough to talk about it and have the courage to know that I may get repercussions from it one day, but if I don't say something now, I can't look at myself in the mirror and look at my children in the future that I don't have right now, that I have in the future, and say, son, daughter, I did everything I could so that I can make it better for you. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
So many things.
Yeah, I know.
This is amazing. It's like wicked problems and design thinking made a baby and became this slide deck.
Yes.
So cool. Makes me think of a few resources I read over the summer. Wired to Care.
Wired to Care.
Super awesome, and it talks about this a lot. It doesn't talk about it as explicitly as you did, but Wired to Care is all about how do we start addressing our biases, addressing our limitations, and as designers, especially for those of us who are human-centered designers, this is what we talk about all day. Like we talk about our biases, we talk about our limitations, our assumptions, checking ourselves. So Wired to Care is awesome. It's written by one of the G School alum. Super awesome guy. Devek, is his name? Wired to Care. The other thing that came to mind, I did training with the I-Teams in LA a couple summers ago. Who's heard of the I-Teams?
Yeah. innovation teams?
Innovation teams. We have one here in Austin. It's led by Carrie O'Connor. She's the Chief Innovation Officer at the City of Austin. When I ran that training, one of the resources that came up for us is a really cool book called Service Innovation Handbook. The very first exercise is checking yourself. So before you start any project, check in with where you're at, and that Service Innovation Guidebook has this amazing worksheet to sort of see where you're at and what you're bringing in, and then do that exercise with your team. So as you were talking, it was just like these things that are permanent, they're in the air, right? Like it isn't just you, there's a movement collectively, not only here in the US, but internationally to address this stuff. So there's really a lot of resources, but I wanted to share those two with you guys that came to mind for me. And now it's time for questions. Any questions you guys have for Ruben? Let's hear them.
I was piggyback on that because that was the question I was going to ask: is what book has really inspired you on this quest to share your message?
Oh,
Inspire people.
I think it's more the conversations I've had with people. I love reading books. The Truth About Leadership is one. The Truth About Leadership is. I'll send you that book if you like that. But I think I'm at the intersectionality of like leadership and servant leadership, marketing, telling stories, and then design and innovation. And so when I combine all those things, like maybe that's a unique recipe, and then maybe from an equity lens, right? So you combine all those things, and those kind of create this. But it's a lot of conversations I have within like the Black and Latino community. Yes, sir.
You heard of the intent leadership, and there's some videos on YouTube by a guy by the name of David Marquette.
Oh no.
So he was a sub commander, and he had spent a year learning this one sub and all the special things about it. And the day he went to take command of it, he was given a different sub and knew absolutely nothing about the specifics of it. And how did he create the worst submarine crew, and in a very short time turn that into the best submarine crew, all through intent leadership.
I love that.
So is that the name of the book, Intent Leadership?
If you just do a search on David Marquette, Marquet, on YouTube, you'll have what you need.
Yeah, I'm reading more about right now recently systems leadership.
What is it?
Systems leadership.
Systems leadership.
Yeah, so if you Google systems leadership. So a couple years ago I was talking about adaptive leadership and about how to be flexible in the process. And recently, as of late, I've been thinking and reading about systems leadership and how that applies. So like, how do you actually apply your leadership principles to larger systems? Yes, sir.
My question would be, what were the catalysts in becoming self-aware enough to question your own beliefs and open your mind within your life?
People love me, and they're willing to be patient with me and call me out. So I have a very driven and determined natural personality, but it's through calm and reflective conversation that I'm able to like, oh, I was being a jerk, huh? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. I'm like, okay. And when I have those sobering moments, I'm able to see like, yeah, I don't like being treated as the other, and so I don't want to do that to other people either. So like my journey into, my journey, by default, my journey into the Latino community just is because I grew up in that community. My journey into the Black community started at the age around 8. Exposure to hip hop, living in a Black neighborhood, became that. My journey into mainstream America began mainly in late high school, early college, and then my journey into becoming more aware of the intersectionality of gender and identity, that really started about 10 years ago. And I think I took my bridge into really embracing that whole community when one of my mentors, her name is Celia Israel, she's a House representative, one of the first openly lesbian representative in the Capitol here in Austin. And I helped her run and win the campaign for rep. And maybe 10 years early from that, I'm like, hey, I respect you, but I don't really know if I need to step into that lane. But now I'm like, no, we're gonna step into this ring because you deserve as many rights as everyone else does. And so it's having that patience and empathy for each individual and understanding that we are all in this together. So yeah, I think it's been a gradual process. So my journey to wokeness is still growing. I mean, I would say I'm more aware and awake than prior before, but everyone's on their individual journey. You just have to meet people where they're at and say, hey, let's keep going. Don't just stay there. Like, let's keep going. Like, let go of the guilt and let's get working. The guilt doesn't do anything. Like, let's get to work. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, Kate.
What about disability?
Disability is key. The university has, right literally next door to my office, we have a very strong effort in trying to create some moment of disability for those who are disabled. So, yes, that is key. That is actually the newest space that I'm learning and becoming more tolerant and accepting and learning about. I grew up with two uncles who were deaf, so I know partial sign language, but I never considered that as a disability until I realized, oh, yeah, this is a huge limiting aspect of people. And so being able to not just see them for the disability, but for them as people is key in understanding how to talk about it. I can't sit here and tell you I understand all the nuances of the disabled community or of the community above 40, right, or who may be experiencing job loss, but I'm here to learn. So, yeah, like, please teach me if you know that, right? Like, all right, son, you have to sit down, let's teach you some stuff.
There's
cool.
a lot of great panels at South by that are coming up, so check that out too.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, I would like to invite you guys, if you do choose to be involved. I'm having a diversity advocates meetup of executives from all around the country. It's going to be on Monday, the 11th, at WeWork Congress on the 16th floor, and it's from 12 to 3. It's free, and you can register at the letter D, the letter A, as in Diversity Advocates, sxsw.splashthat.com.
Wow. Anyone else?
I have a quick question. Hi. What are some examples of some things that innovative companies are doing to encourage engagement around diversity and inclusion?
I think that I don't know specifically one company that's doing this, but I think if we could do a lot more civic hacking and have companies invite their community into their offices to do this collectively, it would be great. Because it would expose the community to how technology works for them, lend some of the resources to the community to build, and be a co-creator and partner in that. I don't know any company that's specifically doing that right now that's inviting people in the community or people from diverse communities to come and iterate and innovate with them. But I think that's a nice step. When you see corporations saying, we're stewarding this, we want to be able to build with you, and we're invested as much as you are, I think that'll be a big shift. Hopefully Apple and Google. Google is lending their space for this event happening on the 9th of the 9th of this week, and it's called Generation Titans, and they're bringing together 4 of the top movements in the country, like United We Dream, the students from Parkland, Florida, several others, nonprofits, to build with entrepreneurs who are driving solutions in those spaces here in Austin and figuring out what they can do together. So Google's trying to open up their space, but really what it comes down to is how much money you're putting down. A lot of people are like, yeah, we'll do the bare minimum, but not a lot of people are willing to put the money where the mouth is. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm just saying, you know, it's kind of like when companies say, you know, we're diverse. Like, look at our diversity numbers, but yet they pad all their numbers. And this is no shot to anybody. It's just like the way the numbers show. It's more of like, oh, we got a lot of white females up in the ranks. Like, hold on. Like, we still need to do better. Like, yes, and let's figure out how we can throw down the rope so we can help other people up. So it's not either or, it's like and. So
that makes me think of the other book I'm reading right now, which is Michelle Obama's So Good. And I love, like, cause she, you know how Sheryl Sandberg was like, just lean in, y'all, just lean in, and Michelle Obama's like, yeah, we are, like, we are leaning in. There's more. There needs to be more than that. It's not because I'm unwilling to show up, you know. Yeah, I love that. But the other thing that came to mind is in the public sector, there's those opportunities for hackathons, because Austin had one, right, for our homelessness issue, and anyone in the community was open to coming in and hacking for solutions with the I-team. They were looking at ways that they could use blockchain to solve for identity, because one of the problems the homelessness community has is that they can't retain their identification. Without identification, they can't access services. And then IDEO has the open IDEO groups where they work on all kinds of social issues, and there's a community here for you guys to join too if you're interested, and they hack for wicked problems, social inequality problems. So public sector is trying to get into that space, not so much the private.
Hopefully we can do a combination of both. If you work at one of those corporations, let's talk. Because I can bring the academic, we can bring the public, and we can bring the private together. And hopefully we can start moving. I have office hours on Fridays in the mornings from like 9 to 12. So if you ever want to set up a meeting, I'll send you a link so you can actually fill out the Calendly and we can sit down and talk if you want to go further and deeper. I'm here, my role is to teach entrepreneurship and product management to low-income first-generation college students. So I'm teaching and still running several initiatives inside my unit. But that's one of my key priorities. And so if you want to sit down and talk, I not only face inward to the university, but I feel it face outward. So this is kind of part of my job. And if we can collaborate, yeah.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you.
I feel like I've met you. I'm trying to think about where
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, got an offer letter from Michelle Obama. I'm super stoked. I'm gonna start working on this. This is my fiance. Oh, okay. I did not know that. How do you know that? I worked at Cantu. Oh, really? That's like an external consultant. I wondered if my company was open to that. Anyway, I'm not really that was a really cool experience. It was good. It's just, you know, being here. Ultimately really rewarding.
Yeah. I'm doing some more events for you. And we'll be doing some more workshops. So I can send you that. I currently focus on a close class.
That was my plan.
But we are having more.
Yeah, but you do. I think they're getting cheaper and cheaper. Like, and you see how fast things are. Okay. I know, we're going to be able to control the
Great. I'm glad that you were able to comment. Yeah, I know it takes a lot of courage for me to talk about this.